Hey everyone, welcome back to my home remodel series. In a previous video, my wife and I experimented with different cleaning chemicals to see what worked best on cleaning our tile floor in the kitchen. And so in this video, we're going to start with cleaning the kitchen because it's just really driving us crazy having this extremely dirty looking floor, and we feel like this will just be kind of like an easy win for us to have this area clean, and we can like say, oh, we actually completed something in the house, because everything else is just taking so long. It's kind of demoralizing when you're doing all this work and yet nothing really looks like it's getting better. So the kitchen is going to be an easy win for us to help us feel better about, the work that we're doing. So in our floor cleaning experiment video, we discovered that the baking soda was essentially the best at cleaning the floor. And I think part of that is that our floor is just so dirty. I don't think it's had like a deep cleaning in the entire time the house has been built. It's probably just had like an occasional mopping, but nothing crazy. And so because of that, the floor just built up so many layers of dirt. And so it really needed something to provide some serious friction to it to scrape and like scrub all that grime off the floor. So the baking soda worked really well for that, because combined with the floor scrubber and then the fact that the baking soda, even when mixed with the water, it doesn't fully dissolve and it has a little bit of grit still left to it. It seems to work really well on removing that grime. You can see as I clean the floor just how fast that water turns from, the white baking soda into this grayish brown color, and that's just how much dirt is coming up with it. And I'll be honest, this wasn't a one-time thing. So, we had really hoped that we'd find some cleaning chemical that allow us to like throw it on once and just magically clean the floor all in one go. But this ended up being a multiple time process. So I think altogether at this point, I think we've cleaned the floor 3 times since this video. So once in this video and then like 2 more times since then. And we use different cleaning chemicals during that process, just to try out different things, because it just each time we were getting like more and more dirt and grime off the floor. And I wouldn't say it's perfect right now. The grout is still a bit dirty. I think that really is going to require like getting down on the hands and knees and really focusing on it. But I feel we're finally at the point now that the tile is basically as clean as it's going to get. When we started working on the laundry room, we ended up using liquid barkeeper's friend. And I think the main reason for that was we actually ran out of baking soda at that point and we didn't have any more on hand. And we were buying them at like Costco and Sam's Club because they sell them in large, like 10, 13 pound bags. And so that's how much we ended up using up. I think we went through like a bag and a half or maybe 2 bags total. Probably used more than we needed to, especially the first time that we used it. Second time we were a little better about not putting too much on the ground, but yeah, that's just how dirty the floor was and how many times we scrubbed the hell out of it using, well, everything that we could. Moving on from cleaning the floors, because there's really only so much you can do before you're just bored out of your mind and can't do it anymore, we started working on the living room again to peel off the grass cloth from the walls. I'm pretty sure I've talked about the grass cloth in the living room before, and because the living room just isn't a priority for me right now, I'm not spending a lot of time working on removing it because it is kind of time consuming. While the grass cloth itself comes off very easily, the paper backing that remains on the wall when you peel off the cloth is much harder to remove. So this is a project that my wife and I just work on as we feel like it or have the time. Just because it's going to take so much time and it's so much work. It's just one of those things that's okay, we'll do this for an hour and then, go back to whatever we need to do, or maybe we'll work on it a little bit for the day, but we don't devote a lot of time to it since it's not a priority. So this is a room that I'll eventually get to it, but until I do other rooms first, it's just low on my list. But I come in here when I need to just take a break from doing the other stuff. Another reason why I don't want to do this entire room in one go, although maybe it would be better, is that it produces so much dust pulling the grass cloth on the wall. And I think it's one of the issues in the house as far as the smell, this kind of almost moldy, but just this stale smell in the home, and then the amount of dust that's kind of in the house. And I think it's primarily trapped in the grass cloth. So it might be better to just get it all over with and pull it off like a band-aid basically and just do it all at once. But you remove a panel or two of it and it produces so much dust in the air, and it really becomes difficult to want to stay in there and keep going. So it's one of those things that I do a little bit, I let the dust settle, I vacuum up, and then I leave it alone until I'm ready to do it again. And again, like I said earlier, removing the paper backing is really difficult. It's not like removing wallpaper. It's a lot harder. It takes more physical work with the scraping blade to get it off. I have tried spraying it with water and it doesn't seem to work any better. In fact, I feel like it's a little bit worse once it's sprayed with water. So I really don't know what the best way is, if there's a more time efficient way to remove it all. If you have experience doing this, then please leave me a comment and tell me, because I'm more than happy to learn a faster way to get this stuff off. Because this really is the most time consuming part of it, and it's why I don't do the entire room at one time, because it's so much physical work to get this stupid brown paper off the wall. Alright, so after putting it off for basically as long as I could, just making excuses and being lazy, I finally started prepping the ceilings for paint. So I've probably said before, but I really don't like painting. I like the final product, but I hate the prep work for paint. I hate taping things off and cleaning the walls and all that. It's just so much work for something that's really easy once you get going. Once you put paint on a roller, I enjoy that process, and it doesn't really take long. But the prep work is what I despise. And so when it comes to that, I drag my feet really bad. In the kitchen, I'm gonna have to deal with these wood beams that divide the ceiling into 5 sections. And I just knew it was gonna be a lot of taping and a lot of work. And frankly, I was concerned about how well the tape was gonna stick to the wood and how much coverage it was gonna provide. Was it actually gonna lay flat enough to actually protect the wood, or was I gonna have issues with paint seeping under? So I was really putting it off because it was just something I didn't want to do. But it got to the point where I just couldn't put it off anymore. And one of the things I ultimately decided on is that instead of painting the entire kitchen ceiling all at once, I'm gonna do 3 sections, which is the section over the dinette portion of the kitchen. So I'm not gonna get above the cabinets right now and above the island, where it's gonna be a lot harder to work and take more time. I'm just gonna do the 3 easiest parts. And then on top of that, I'm going to tape off the hallway, and I'm gonna do the ceiling there and the dining room, which we're gonna make into an office. All those rooms are ready for ceiling paint, and I'm gonna do them all at once. One thing I did not film and include in the video was I scrubbed the ceilings with TSP after I vacuumed them. So I vacuumed first to remove any cobwebs and spiders that were hanging out up top, and then I scrubbed all the ceilings down with TSP. Normally, I don't do that as part of my painting process. I know you're supposed to clean any surface before you paint. Usually I only do my walls and I don't scrub my ceilings, and I've never had a problem. But when we bought the house, the upstairs air conditioner did not work. At some point during a storm, a small tree had fallen on the air conditioner and had killed the upstairs air conditioner. So for a certain amount of time, the upstairs AC was out, and because of that, the humidity level in the home was definitely higher than it should have been. So some mold growth definitely happened. When I got onto a ladder and looked up the ceiling, I felt that there was some mold on the ceiling. So I decided to TSP all the ceilings that I'm painting. So again, the hallway, the kitchen, and the dining room. I scrubbed them all down, and I do feel like it made a difference. When I got back up on the ladder, I felt like the specks of what I thought was mold growth were now gone, and the house to me smelled a bit better after doing this. So after cleaning and taping off the trim, I was ready to paint the ceilings. So I have to say, another reason why I really hate textured ceilings is that they are a lot more difficult to paint. You really have to make sure that you get a fair amount of paint on your paintbrush and you go back and forth over the area multiple times to ensure that you got every little bit of texture covered with paint. So cutting in took much longer on the textured ceiling than it normally would take me to do a smooth ceiling. And I definitely used up more paint. I could tell how much faster I was going through paint because of the textured ceiling. Now ultimately, I feel like I probably actually did better cutting in on these ceilings than what I've done in the past, because I probably went a bit lighter on the paint than I should have in the past, and this time it required me to actually probably use the right amount of paint that was necessary for the cut-in process. I realized after I did my cut-in in the kitchen that I needed to cover up the entire wood beam to protect it when I applied the primer on the roller and then came back and did the finish paint, because the chance of paint just like flying off of the roller, specks of it flying off the roller was going to be pretty high, and most likely if it hit the wood, it was going to be very hard to get it off of there. And I was just going to end up with white specks of paint all over the wood beams. So initially I only put one piece of tape all the way around, and during the cut-in process I realized I really needed two, because two at minimum was just going to be necessary to protect it from the paintbrush and possibly paint flying off of the brush during that process. But after that still only covered half of the wood beam. So once I finished all the cut-in, then I came back and I applied all the paper everywhere. So I should have done the paper from the beginning. So I created more work for myself, and I used up like a whole roll of tape that wasn't necessary, but lessons learned. Before I can start using a roller on the ceiling, I need to get this fan uninstalled so that I have full access and it won't be in the way. I could have done this at the beginning, but I left it up just in case I wanted to turn the fan on to get some airflow in the kitchen, or if I needed the light source from the fan to be able to see better. But at this point, I no longer need it. And I knew the fan was metal, obviously older, but this has to be the heaviest fan motor I've ever felt. I mean, this thing's got to weigh like more than 50 pounds, honestly. It weighs like twice the amount of any modern fan motor. So I think this thing is like pure cast iron. It is just so freaking heavy. So the fan was hung up to the ceiling using a giant metal hook that was screwed directly into the joist. And while that was most likely the improved installation method for the fan, since it didn't look like it was Mickey Mouse or anything, it looked appropriate and it was solid, the electrical wiring for the fan is coming directly through the ceiling joist. So there's no electrical box whatsoever. And since I will not be putting the fan back up, I'm gonna put a chandelier here, I need to put it in an electrical box. So I'm gonna cut out a hole for my box. I'm going to put in a flat, like pancake style electrical box that will mount directly to the bottom of the joist. And it's only about 1 inch thick. That will allow the wires to come into the box and sit in there and be protected. And then when I install the chandelier, you're not going to see anything obviously, but it will be up to code. So I started cutting in the hallway with primer. There was no reason to do it because I'm actually not ready to paint the hallway yet. I don't even have the finished paint. I haven't bought it yet. But everything in the hallway was actually already done. I've already cleaned up the walls, already filled in any holes in it from pictures being hung up. I had TSP'd everything. So I realized that while doing the taping, while taping up on the ceiling. And so I just continued taping off everything down below. And at that point I was like, well, I have the paintbrush and primer already open, so I might as well go ahead and start cutting in there as well. So after finally finishing all of my prep work in the kitchen, which included putting plastic all over the walls and on the floor to ensure I didn't drip any paint, I was ready to apply the primer to the ceilings. And let me tell you, primer has never looked this white before. So normally I apply primered stuff and, you know, yes, it's white, but it's very dull white. This is the only case where I have applied primer and it just looked like clean, crisp white after being applied, because the ceilings are just such a dull, like yellowish tan tone, and they just look so dirty that applying the primer was just this huge change to the visual look in the kitchen, in my opinion. Some of you may not like it. I don't care. Okay, I like it. I like how much cleaner it looks once it was all done and fully painted. I hated how it looked before. It just looked very dingy, in my opinion, and just a very sad, dull environment. So the chandelier in the dining room is going to become the chandelier I'm going to install in the kitchen. So I'm going to take this down and I'm actually going to take it out to the garage and I'm going to repaint it using Rust-Oleum's metallic paint. I've used that before on other projects and I really like how the finish comes out. So if for some reason I don't like how this looks in the end, I could always just go out, I guess, and buy a new chandelier, but I'm going to try to salvage this one by making it a color that I actually enjoy to look at. Now, the ceiling in here is already white, and it's one of the few rooms in the house that is not the same color as like what's in the kitchen. But there was an area with what looked to be like some water stain that I had to apply some stain blocker to, and then I can't guarantee that this is the same white as what I'm applying on the rest of the ceilings because there can be different shades. So I'm just gonna have to repaint this one anyway. I actually forgot to mention earlier in the video when I said all of the rooms I was going to be painting the ceilings, I forgot to mention I was going to be doing the laundry room as well. So the laundry room is actually a big deal because I need the laundry room, the kitchen, and the half bath to all have their ceilings done so that I can paint all of the walls in those 3 rooms because they're all going to get the same paint color. And so once I open that paint, I want to do all of those areas at the same time. At this point, I started to apply my ceiling paint, and I was concerned that you were not going to be able to see the difference between the ceiling paint and the primer. In fact, I was concerned that as I did it, I wouldn't be able to see the difference, you know, while staring at it. But luckily, there was a very distinct visual difference. Now, in the dining room, it was a little bit harder for me to see it as I was painting it. I think the camera actually picks it up better than what I can see in person. But in the other areas, I didn't have any issue. But I guess it was just because I had to plug in some floor lights throwing off white light in there, it was harder for me to see it. But on the camera, you guys managed to pick it up and you can see the difference between what's been painted and what's primered. Now, I started in the dining room, but when I got to the hallway, that's where you could really see the difference between the paint and the primer. So initially I started with the lights on because I figured I needed to be able to see better. But at some point about halfway through, I realized that if I just turned the lights off, I could actually see better than with the lights on. And now with the lights off, you can really see the visual difference between the primer and how white the ceiling paint is. So even though the primer looked incredibly white when I applied it over the original paint because of how, you know, like yellowish cream colored it was, it's nowhere close to being a pure white like what the ceiling paint is.
No.
So like I said just a few moments ago, I decided I wanted to change the color of the chandelier. So I'm going to be using Rust-Oleum's metallic-based burnished amber paint, and I'm going to paint over the chandelier to change the color. Now I've done this before on other hardware like door handles and hinges, but I've never done it on a light. So we'll see how well this comes out. This is definitely the most complicated shaped object I've ever tried to spray paint. So I'm a little concerned about like over applying paint and under applying at the same time, just because there's so many angles I have to try to get. But we'll see how well this works, and if I don't like it, worst case, I guess I buy a new chandelier.